Andrew Jackson is best known for his role as the 7th President of the United States. He was the first man elected from Tennessee to the House of Representatives. He served briefly in the Senate, and he became a national hero as a major general in the War of 1812 when he defeated the British at New Orleans. But Andrew Jackson was so much more than these bullet points in history. Today we look a little closer at this historical figure in a segment we like to call 5 Curious Things You May Not Have Known About Andrew Jackson. While the deadly duel between Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton is the most famous in American history, Andrew Jackson was a frequent dueler among the prominent politicians of the dueling age, which lasted up until the Civil War era. Known for his quick temper and willingness to fight anyone who crossed him, Jackson fought in several duels throughout his life. One of the most famous duels involved a man named Charles Dickinson. On May 30th, 1806, the two men met after Dickinson, an attorney from Nashville, Tennessee, insulted Jackson's wife. Rachel Jackson's first husband, Louis Robards, petitioned for a divorce, accusing Rachel of desertion and living in sin with Jackson. Robards failed to finalize their divorce, but Rachel and Jackson, believing the divorce to be finalized, eloped in 1791. Rachel and Robards' divorce was not finalized until September 1793, and Jackson and Rachel remarried in 1794. Dickinson was regarded as one of the best shots in America. Jackson was a fearless soldier. Dickinson got off the first shot, hitting Jackson in the chest. Jackson then raised his pistol and pulled the trigger, but the pistol jammed. In a breach of the code duello, Jackson recocked his pistol and fired at Dickinson, killing him. Jackson was not prosecuted for murder, and the duel had little effect on his successful presidency campaign in 1829. And although Jackson's wound was not fatal, he suffered chronic pain from the wound for the remainder of his life. Andrew and his younger brother Robert served as errand boys and messengers during the American Revolutionary War. A British loyalist gave away their location, and the British raided the home where the boys were hiding and captured them. The hot-tempered Andrew was defiant even as he was being captured, so to humiliate Jackson, a British officer ordered Jackson to clean his boots. You can imagine how well that went over with the young future president. Enraged by Jackson's disrespect, the officer raised his sword and swung at Jackson, who instinctively put up his arms to defend himself. Jackson's forehead and hand were slashed, leaving the boy scarred for life. The brothers were marched 40 miles to a British prison camp in Camden, South Carolina. Andrew suffered greatly during his captivity, nearly starving and contracting smallpox. Eventually, the boys were released from the prison camp when Jackson's mother arrived and convinced the British to include Andrew and Robert in a prisoner exchange. By that time, both boys were very ill. In fact, Robert died of smallpox shortly after their release. By age 14, Andrew Jackson was an orphan, with a thorough hatred for the British. His older brother died of heat stroke at the Battle of Stono Ferry. His younger brother Robert succumbed to smallpox, and his mother died of cholera after nursing American prisoners in Charleston Harbor. Quite a rough beginning of life for a young boy in the 18th century. While dogs are the most talked about pets in the White House in recent years, the fact is that there have been a multitude of different animals that earn the title of presidential pet, including some unique animals such as Calvin Coolidge's bobcat, Martin Van Buren's tigers, and Teddy Roosevelt's bear. But there is one presidential pet that nearly brought the house down. The house of the Lord, that is. On June 8, 1845, Andrew Jackson passed away from congestive heart failure. Thousands gathered to pay their respects, including Paul, Jackson's pet parrot, who squawked squeaked, and swore like a sailor. Reverend William Menifee Normant, who presided at Jackson's funeral, was quoted as saying, "Before the sermon and while the crowd was gathering, a wicked parrot that was a household pet got excited and commenced swearing so loud and long as to disturb the people and had to be carried from the house." The presidential parrot let loose perfect gusts of cuss words. People were horrified and awed at the bird's lack of reverence. The bird was originally meant for Jackson's wife, Rachel, but after she passed away, Jackson became the African gray's caretaker. So, how did the parrot get such a foul mouth? Well, with what we know about Old Hickory, a man so tough and temperamental, it's safe to assume the bird picked up the habit straight from its owner. We don't know what happened to Paul after his indecent outbursts, but we do know that Jackson and his dirty bird mouth will forever live in infamy. Andrew Jackson was indeed born in a log cabin. Every historian and Jackson family member agrees with that point, but the location of that log cabin has brewed controversy for nearly 3 centuries. 2 locations claim to be the site of the cabin. One is located near Waxhaw, North Carolina, where a local chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution first built a monument in 1858 on what was believed to be the base of the original home's chimney. The other is 2 miles away, in South Carolina, where a monument erected by another local chapter of the DAR claims the site of the log cabin Jackson was born in. Since that time, there's been a rivalry between North and South Carolina over who gets to claim Jackson. After Jackson's death, family members began debating where exactly he was born. Some Jackson descendants say the birth occurred at Uncle George and Aunt Peggy's house over in Union County, North Carolina. Other family members say he was born on the James Crawford Plantation in South Carolina. Part of the uncertainty is due to the fact that the border between North and South Carolina was not fully established until the 1800s. Andrew Jackson's father died before Old Hickory was born, so presumably Jackson's mother stayed with her sister on James Crawford's plantation, which is now Andrew Jackson State Park in South Carolina. It's where most historians say Jackson was born and raised, so who am I to disagree? North Carolina still claims Old Hickory, even though in a letter Jackson wrote, he says that he was born in South Carolina. Jackson even approved an 1825 map of where his place of birth is located. I wonder if that map has changed since 1825. In January of 1835, an unemployed house painter named Richard Lawrence hid behind a pillar at the entrance to the Capitol Rotunda, waiting for President Andrew Jackson. Jackson was attending a congressional funeral held in the House chamber of the Capitol building. As the president approached, Lawrence stepped forward, raised a Derringer single-shot pistol, and pulled the trigger, but the gun misfired. 67-year-old Jackson was in ill health, but confronted his attacker, clubbing Lawrence several times with his walking cane. Lawrence managed to pull out a second loaded pistol and pulled the trigger, but it also misfired. Quickly, bystanders tackled the would-be assassin to the floor while the president was hustled away. Jackson was saved from the first known attempt to assassinate a U.S. president. Jackson was convinced that Lawrence had been hired by his Whig Party opponents to assassinate him. As president, Jackson engaged in fierce political combat with his congressional opponents, who were so passionate in their opposition that they formed a new political party. Led by Henry Clay, the Whigs labeled Jackson King Andrew. At the time, Jackson's Democrats and the Whigs were locked in battle over Jackson's attempt to dismantle the Bank of the United States. Whigs accused Jackson of corruption and incompetence. The president retaliated with his own heated rhetoric and even threats of physical violence. In late January 1835, South Carolina Senator John C. Calhoun, who had been Jackson's first vice president, left office to join the opposition and reportedly declared that Jackson was a Caesar who ought to have a Brutus. Among those possibly listening to that speech was Richard Lawrence, who spent the rest of his life in a mental institution. A century later, Smithsonian Institute researchers conducted a study of Lawrence's derringers, during which both guns discharged properly on the test's first try. It was later determined that the odds of both guns misfiring during the assassination attempt were 1 in 125,000. And there you have 5 curious things you might not have known about Andrew Jackson. If you have any historical figures you'd like to add to these episodes, let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching today, folks. We'll see you next time on 5 Curious Things. Take care.